everyone, I'm Joe Ackourey, and welcome to the Fly of the Week. For this episode, episode 68, I'll be tying the emerging stage of the March Brown Mayfly. March Browns typically start emerging around the end of the second week of May and lasting until the first week of June. It's another important stage as far as a feeding opportunity for trout. You know, you have your life cycle of the March Brown, the Mayfly nymph, the emerger, the adult, and the spinner stage or the egg-laying stage. All of which are very important feeding opportunities for the trout, but also offer excellent opportunities to catch trout for the fishermen. So, today we're going to focus on the emerging stage. It's a great pattern. Typically when these March Brown Mayflies nymphs become active, they start to migrate to the slower currents, and the trout are just sitting there ready to pick them off. So this emerging pattern will work well during that migration. So without further ado, let's get started. All right, here we go. The March Brown Mayfly Emerger. Place your hook in a vise and begin to cover the entire shank of the hook with thread. In this case, the shank has a slight bend to it, but we're going to wrap back to the critical bend where it really starts. I'll bring it out of the vise a little bit and show you. There's like a real obvious bend to it, and we're going to stop right about there. And that's where we're going to place our initial material, which in this case will be the trailing shuck. The trailing shuck is going to be made out of my sparkle yarn in a medium dun color. Excuse me. And we're just going to put maybe 8 or 10 of these fibers in. And I'm going to attach them to the top of the hook, shank. And I'll adjust the length a little bit later on. It's not really that critical right now. So I'm going to wrap this up pretty much the entire hook, taking our time. Just like so. Clip off your excess and return your thread to the back, right where the shuck is. So this is an emerging pattern, and the shuck pretty much imitates the mayfly sliding out, the actual adult sliding out of the nymphal shuck, and this is the shuck. This imitates the shuck sliding off or peeling away. So the next step is I like to put tails on top of the shuck. And for that material, I'm going to be using natural lemon wood duck flank feather. And I'm just going to take a couple fibers, 3 or 4 fibers, maybe slightly more. Yeah, there we go. All right. We're going to just place them right on top. Incidentally, the length of the shuck that I currently have is pretty much perfect, so I'm going to let that go, and I'm going to angle the hook down a little bit so you can see what I got going on here. So you have your trailing shuck and your tails. Okay, and again, I'm going to wrap the excess material from the tail all the way up. I'll reorient my hook. Okay, clip off the excess. So return your thread back again and prepare for the next material. The next material is the ribbing or the segmentation. So I like to use a dark brown rod wrapping thread. It's a braided thread, it's size A. And I'm just going to tie that in. on the side. If I can get a hold of it. There we go. A little tricky there for a second. And make sure all the tail, the shuck, and the rod wrapping thread or the segmentation material are all lined up. It's a tricky piece of rod wrapping thread. There we go. Okay. So now, in review, reorient the hook again so you can see. We have our trailing shuck, which is underneath our tails. We have our tails on top of the shuck. And we have our segmentation material, or the brown rod wrapping thread. Now for the abdomen. The abdomen is going to be made from no other than ringneck pheasant tail feather fibers. And you want to select a ringneck tail that has quite long fibers, like what I'm showing here. You need to have them quite long because you're going to wrap this up, 3/4, maybe 70%, 75% of the hook shank. And you got to have really long fibers. So that being said, I'm going to take about 8 of those, clip them off as close to the quill as possible, and I'm going to tie in the natural ends. These are the natural ends. These are the cut ends. I'm going to tie the natural ends in, and I'm not going to waste much material here, so I'm going to kind of just take the very tips of them and tie them in and bring my thread up to about the 75% of the hook shank and begin to wrap the abdomen. And just take your time and wrap this moving forward up toward the eye, and we'll build a gradual taper. And you do that by just leaning each wrap, progressive wrap, closer to each other. That's about it right there, guys. That's about all I'm going to get out of it. So that's why I'm saying you need to select a ringneck tail, ringneck pheasant tail that has quite long fibers, and this has quite long fibers, but as you could see, I just made it. So now, in review, make sure this is anchored. I'm going to go over what we did. I'm going to reorient my hook down so you could see it. We have our trailing shuck. I got this one wild tail fibers that I don't need. I have my trailing shuck, and on top of the shuck I have my tails. We just built our body, which is about 70% of the hook shank made from ringneck pheasant tail fiber, which should have a long fiber length. And now I'm going to take the ribbing, the rod wrapping thread, and begin to wrap equally spaced ribs or segments around the abdomen. Take our time. I'm going to reorient the hook a little bit. Okay. And now I'm going to tie that off. Clip off the excess. And put the hook back where it should be. There we go. Very good. It's looking good, guys. So, our next step is placing the legs in. And for the legs, I like to use speckled henback. It's a beautiful colored speckled henback feather. I'm going to strip off the downy fuzz, expose the stem a little bit, and notice that there's a natural curve to this feather. I want the curve going down and over the fly, not up and away. So let's anchor that in on the side, like so. Clip off your stem, the excess stem. Nice. We're almost done. We're halfway done. So now the next step would be to build the thorax. And the thorax is going to, of course, have the legs. The thorax will be made from the March Brown fur blend that I have on my site. And also a wing. And I use the Comparadun deer hair in a medium shade. So let's start out by, before we put the wing on, I want to put a nice foundation of this March Brown blend. I'll form a noodle. Got some debris in there. Form a nicely tight noodle. Slide that in position. Wrap this to the eye almost. Don't crowd it, but, you know, leave a little bit of space there. And work back up to the center of that thorax. That's the point where the wing is going to be attached. And I'm going to take a little nip of this Comparadun deer hair in a medium shade. I'm going to comb out the fuzz if there's any in there. Yep, there's a little bit there. Get rid of that. And I'm going to place that in my hair stacker and stack it up a bit. Now, these are the cut ends that I cut off the hide, and these are the natural ends. I'm going to place the natural ends inside the hair stacker. Okay, let's see what we got here. Nice and even. I want the natural ends going back toward the back end of the shank of the hook, not facing the opposite way. So yeah, we got a good bunch here that's lined up fairly decent. And I'm going to anchor that right in that sweet spot in the center of the thorax that we just put together. So now I'm going to pinch this really tight along. I'm also pinching the hook. So I'm going to just wrap a couple of wraps there, and I'm going to undo it. Reason why I do that is because I'm kinking the deer hair so that when I rewrap it, it's got a nice set there, as you could see. And the very next, you know, when I start to wrap, you could see how much deeper it is already with not even a full wrap. So that's my goal. I want to get that as tight as possible onto the thorax. Very good. And the length of that is going to be, well, pretty much the shank of the hook. Clip off your excess. I'm going to add a little bit more March Brown blend to hide those wraps. Just a little bit, guys. Don't overdo it. Okay. Here we go. Nice. And now, let's take our hackle pliers and begin to wrap 2 or 3 wraps here. I want to wrap behind the wing. These are the legs now. Behind the wing, 1 full wrap, and in front of the wing. And 1 right in the center of the thorax. And now you can tie it off. Okay, clip off your excess. There's a bit of cleaning up to do here yet, so it's a great pattern. When these March Browns are emerging, the nymphs are crawling out of the faster waters into the slower currents, and the trout are just picking these emergers off in that transition area between the fast and slower waters or currents. And this fly will work magic for you. I'm going to clip off all of the hackle on top on both front and back, and on the bottom. It's a bit buggy looking. And now I'm going to take the sharp edge of my scissor and just kind of put my scissor inside the wing and draw out, curling the wing. And what that does, it kind of holds an air bubble underneath. And it has a nice added effect to it as an emerger. So yeah, there you go, guys. That's it. That's pretty much it. With the exception of a drop of glue for the waterproofing the knot, this fly is done. Great fly, very effective during the hatch. It's a great emerger pattern. The March Brown Emerger. Thank you for joining me in this episode of the Fly of the Week. If you like the content that I'm pushing out, please subscribe. Tight lines, guys. See you in the next episode.